Knowledgeable.
Knowledgeable, aha, okay. Absolutely, so that they have the right background for the position that they're in, whatever that might be. Yes, sir, in the back.
Perspective.
Perspective, good.
Where they came from and their ability to understand other perspectives.
Very important. And to not sort of generalize that their experience on the one hand is everyone's experience. That's one of the issues. We all come from a neighborhood, whatever that neighborhood is, and yet be open to other. Sure.
I think with that one I would just add empathy.
Yes, okay. You know, one thing we could do at the end of this is we could actually have a candidate ranking by on all of these characteristics. This is a good panel. Yes, sir?
I think along the same lines as knowledgeable, strategic.
Aha.
Ability to see how their decisions are going to impact other issues that a lot of people maybe don't perceive.
Yes, the breadth, in other words, to consider about, well, it'd have to do with context.
Yeah.
Because something can be a fine idea, but there are other factors that mitigate against it, kind of a thing. Yes, we're talking really complex issues, and that applies at a university. The choices that President Haas makes to do one thing means that suddenly there isn't money to do something else. The things that Gleaves and I deal with in a managerial role, they're trade-offs. All of those things are really important. Gleaves.
One of the things, too, I think is essential is courage. You know, leaders, by definition, have to make decisions. And you have to have the courage to make a decision you know is going to upset people. You have to have the same quality of courage to hang in there once all the criticism starts to come in and stay the course. So courage.
Courage is really important, tremendously so, and that's a perfect commentary, because one of the things that President Ford was known for was courage, but also making a decision. And you all know the line, not to decide is to decide. In other words, if you never make a decision at some point, then a certain course of action, there is a result, even if you didn't make a decision. And I'd say that that's one of the most frustrating things that I've seen in my career at times, of people sort of wanting so much to avoid making a decision. And then things languish, things are not addressed. And that's, so it's a combination with courage or being able to see a course of action and saying, well, we need to do something. We can't just sit on this forever. Those are very good points. What else? Yes?
Being able to adjust to what we said, to at first make a decision and stay in accordance when people start criticizing you, but also if you realize you're wrong, to be able to adjust to that.
To modify, exactly, to amend, to do what I call a mid-course correction, exactly, absolutely, to say that didn't work. Do you think that leaders need to be honest? Wouldn't that be nice? To say, gee, that didn't work. We tried that. And how often do you hear that?
Collaborative.
Sorry?
Collaborative.
Collaborative. Aha, good.
Execution. The ability to follow through. And have vision, but also to follow through on it.
Amen. Now I know why you're all in this program. You don't need this program. You've got it. There was another hand. Yes, sir.
I'd like to see vulnerability with their failings. I think just in the debate, the last question was, what do you not know and what are you going to do about it? And it was totally dodged, and it was pretty sanctimonious. I mean,
oh yeah,
a keen awareness of your shortcomings and advertising that in a humble fashion, maybe.
They're totally terrified to do that, to admit anything. You're absolutely right. That's why, yeah, there were a number of issues both last night and throughout this whole series where something is just not addressed. You know, it's the classic, you know, answering the question they want to answer or going to the talking point. But that's right, and I think that certainly, and this is interesting because we can go back through this and we can focus it a little bit on President Ford. This is an interesting list where we can sort of say which of these did he illustrate in what way. Other things, there must be some more. Yes?
Desire to serve.
Ah. And with that understanding, that applies in any setting, desire to serve and understanding what that means, what it means to be of service, what it means, especially in the public sector, what the responsibilities are. In terms of, if any of you are from Southeast Michigan, recall the recent troubles we've had with the mayor of Detroit, the very difficult situation. And by the way, that's an interesting thing because I live, by the way, I should explain, because I can't live everywhere. So I live actually between Ann Arbor and Detroit. I live in Plymouth, and the Amway Grand Plaza is my second home, so I'm really lucky. But no matter where I lived on this job, I'd be commuting one way or the other. But the absence of headlines suddenly, now that Mayor Kilpatrick has stepped down, I'm kind of amazed because just for 8 months we went through every single day a headline. But that understanding of what service was, the vulnerability that one has in service, the fact that any of us in leadership positions are visible 24/7, and especially the higher the position, the more that is. So they have to desire and understand what it is to be a public servant, but then also understand the responsibilities that go with that. And that was just an awkward, terrible situation for all of us in the state. But we will recover. There was another hand, sir. Yes. Do you think you have to have that yourself, or can you select people around you?
Well, I was sort of thinking about it in my previous statement with perspective. And if you understand that people come from different perspectives and you value those perspectives, you'll come up with different outcomes to solutions or problems that we've sort of been dealing with for a very long time. And immediately, the first thing that came to mind was sort of hard power versus soft power. When the EU sort of engages people in order to get folks to do what they would ordinarily do, and not necessarily engage militarily, but economic sanctions or following different paths in order to get people to a conclusion without sort of strong-arming them. And I think you can get a lot of that by acknowledging perspective and acknowledging that there are different ways to get to a result that may not be so obvious. And if we can understand those perspectives, we can get there in a much easier fashion.
That's very true. And the other thing I just added here with that is valuing differences and respecting differences of opinion. That we can, and in fact, this is to quote a Gerald Fordism, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's a very important thing that seems to have been lost in politics in recent times. That valuing the differences, that we can all be equally patriotic, we just have different solutions for resolving a situation. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. This is a pretty healthy list. Let me see. Where does ego fit in? Where does ego in terms of leadership? Good thing, bad thing?
I think it puts leaders in the place to be leaders. I mean, any good leader has an ego. They feel that they're a leader and they feel that they're the best. So that puts them there. But then it should be checked at the door once they're in the position of power. The ego should influence any decisions. But I think it brings out the leader. But it shouldn't influence.
Well, it ties into what was said earlier about confidence. You have to have that to go forward. But on the other hand, I think that your comment is very appropriate. Know when to check it, or keeping it in balance. In other words, to not let the roaring, the adoring crowd change your view.
Well, I was going to tie it right back into confidence.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, that's good.
Ability to delegate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.